Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us. We are so happy you're here. Some of you joining live and a lot of you joining us later in the recording.
Yeah, and today is the Solemnity of the Annunciation. So that is super exciting. So even if you are watching this later, that's when we are, that's when we're going to be
recording this live.
So we just came back from Mass with our kids, and it is very, very exciting to have a little break from the normal Friday penitential season.
Yeah.
And kids are like, Mom, it's a solemnity, you know?
I know, our kids are playing that card big today. Like,
yeah.
Hey, it's a solemnity. Can't I do this? How about that?
Yeah.
So it's fun. So I hope you're enjoying it. Also, too, Alicia and the kids were able to participate with our local bishop.
Consecration today, yes.
Consecration of Russia.
Yes.
To Mary, which was wonderful.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It's just great to be able to join with the whole church, you know, in this kind of prayer. So it was really exciting and awesome. Yeah.
So we are more than halfway through Lent. How's it going? Are you able to keep up with all of the challenges, the promises and commitments that you've made throughout Lent? This has been one of our commitments, is to be live every Friday in Lent.
Yeah.
And it's not a penance for us, but it's hopefully it's an encouragement to you.
We don't want you to get the wrong impression. In fact, we're doing it on Fridays and Lent.
But one of the reasons we started Cana 90 was to help couples think about how to use Lent to foster and empower us in our path to holiness. This is our vocation, marriage and family life. How do we get better at making that an offering through our promises during Lent?
Yeah.
And so at this point, you should be asking, have I remained true to the promises that I've made? Are there some that I want to shed? Are there new ones that we want to start or double down on? Really evaluate that.
There's nothing wrong with making adjustments in the middle of Lent.
That's right.
You know, and just kind of realizing, you know what, I don't know if this is really working, or I'm not really keeping this commitment that I made. So sometimes you may want to say, you know what, I really do want to do this, or sometimes it's time for rediscernment. And I think that that's a good thing to do, and that's a sign of maturity to be able to do that. And also, if something is just like becoming really a burden on you and making you more crabby at home and not really helping you to serve your own family and children, then just think about that a little bit more. But the places that you stayed on track, if that's really blessing you, if that's really helping you grow, continue to do that.
And celebrate that and acknowledge that. And again, one of the things that we try to do as a family is each Sunday for our family meeting to look at how are we doing? Yeah. Every week taking a look and saying, what are the commitments we made? Have we kept up with those commitments? So again, just a kind of a reminder and an encouragement, because our prayer as a married couple should look different.
Right.
Our life, prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, or as we some of the saints have said, prayer, fasting, and mercy. How does that look? And it should look different for us in our marriage and family life. So again, as Cana 90, we've gone through every week with a different Old Testament covenant as a little reflection for you. And so last week we were doing Abraham, and this week the week ahead, we're looking at Moses. And we're looking at the Israelites who were in captivity under the Pharaoh, under the Egyptians.
And we're looking, remember, just a reminder, we're looking at all of these different covenants. And so now this is God's covenant with his people, with the people of Israel. Right. And his covenant was, what did he give? He taught them how to be his people. How did they know how to be his people? Yeah. Through the law. Through the law. And I'm actually doing a Bible study on the Psalms right now with my sisters and with my mom. And in Psalm 1, it says, the law of the Lord is my delight. And that the man who keeps the law of the Lord is like a tree planted by still waters. And I think that sometimes we forget that we can be defined as Catholics, as Christians, by how we follow God's law. And that was God's covenant that was given to Moses, and Moses communicated that to the people. It was like that intermediary, right, between God and his people. And that was such a beautiful, awesome thing. And sometimes the world would say, oh, the law is like a burden. Oh, you have all of these chains on you, and like having to do all these things to go along with what God says. No, the law of the Lord is the path to life. This is the path to fullness. And this is something that we really should delight in, and it should give us life to live our lives as a Catholic.
And I think it's interesting that just from what you just said, that really we want to focus on moving from slavery to real freedom.
Right.
The world might look at this and say,
the law is slavery.
But
That's
the
a lie.
reality is the Egyptians were enslaving the Israelites, and Moses came to set them free. Right. And I think that's important. It's more than that. That was it. Pixar that did the Prince of Egypt. Who did it wasn't Pixar. No, it was somebody else. Anyway, whoever did it, it wasn't Disney.
There's a cartoon.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Prince of Egypt, right? But it's more than just that. Like the reality that they were in such enslavement by the Egyptians that they couldn't worship, that they couldn't live their lives.
Right.
And God had to wean them off of their old life in order to bring them to true freedom, right? And so God...
Because remember when they first left Egypt, they were like, we want to go back. It was so comfortable. But I want to go first. It was, awesome there.
Because when they were enslaved, God had to intervene, and they kept crying out to God. And we have to recognize there are times in our life where we need to cry out to God and recognize that He may not save us the way we thought we would be saved, but we have to recognize that He does want to save us. He does want to bring us true freedom. And so like the Israelites, we need to look at our life right now. Are we enslaved to something? Are we, maybe there's some kind of physical thing going on. Maybe it's, I'm a slave to my anger or to some other bad habit. What's enslaving us? We need to cry out to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And sometimes God is able to, and often wants to, intervene and help, right? And sometimes He does it in wondrous ways. That all those plagues that He brought down in Egypt so as to break the chains that were holding the Israelites back. For me, that was anger. I was enslaved to anger. And not that I'm perfect, and not that I don't lose my cool, but as a dad, I needed to recognize that I was enslaved to a habit that I would always get into. Mm-hmm. And I needed God to intervene so as to set me free. So we need to look at that idea that God comes to set us free. We need to cry out to Him, but we need to identify what are those, what are the things that are enslaving us, or what are the idols that we're worshiping or are falling down to, so that God can set us free.
Have you ever heard the saying, the truth will set you free, but first it'll make you miserable? So when God said to the Israelites, I'm going to set you free from the Egyptians, then all of a sudden they found themselves, and they're like, oh, great, our life is going to be awesome now, right? But they wound up wandering in the desert. Yes. And they were like, we want to go back to our times of slavery because it was so much easier. That's why they forgot. They forgot that they were enslaved, what that meant. You know what it makes me think of is when Jesus came. When Jesus came as the Messiah, the Israelites, the Jewish people at that time thought, great, He's going to conquer the Romans. He's going to be our conquering king now. Everything's going to be awesome. And Jesus said no. And when God took the Israelites out of Egypt, God's like, no, I have a deeper plan here. No, the way to true life is first sacrifice. And I want to refine you. And I'm going to draw you closer to myself in ways that you may not expect. And sometimes that path, I know, like those who are recovering from addiction, sometimes that path is hard. Yeah. But as you move through that, that's where you can find true freedom. Sometimes in our marriage, guess what? Sometimes marriage is hard. Sometimes it's a joy, but sometimes it's difficult. And we have to go through those difficult times to find that true joy. And I think that as we meditate upon Moses and the Israelites and them wandering in the deserts for 40 years, as we are going through Lent for 40 days,
that's right.
We can really think about that, about how is the Lord setting me free, that's right, but still bringing me through that desert time. And do I have that hope that He really has that true joy for me on the other end? And there's something deeper here. He's trying to refine us. He's trying to change us, right? And teach us how to really sacrifice and die to ourselves so we can truly be free, and be free from really our own selfishness and be free from our own sin, which is why Christ came.
And for the Israelites, they had the Passover, right? They had the first Passover meal while they were enslaved. But they continued that as a tradition that they passed on from generation to generation. And so as you ponder this week ahead about the freedom that God wants to bring you, also think about the family traditions that you want to pass on, that you want to have as part of your family culture that's going to orient and remind your kids this is where we're going. This is who we are
Right. This is
as
your
a
identity.
family. This is our identity. This is the family that you belong to, and this is our mission in the world. Anyway, there's some great things in Canaan 90. If you're getting the daily emails, you'll see us walk through that day by day. Or if you have the book or the PDF digital download, you'll see that we have kind of meditations on Moses and that moving from slavery to freedom, and then have some activities for you for the weekend ahead about kind of instilling a deeper family culture that is oriented towards this life of faith and having those kind of traditions for your culture.
Yeah, don't forget to look at those weekend ideas. Do some things with your kids. Really kind of grow in your ability to guide your children and to kind of set that tone in your home that this is a different time of year. This isn't just like this is like summertime. This isn't just like any other time. This is a special time of Lent, a special time of preparation. So make sure that you do that this weekend and that you look at the ones for next weekend so you're ready.
All right, so we are going to go into questions now. So if anyone has any additional ones, you can add them. But we are going to respond to a couple of questions that have been sent in. And so the first question is, help with some real examples of natural consequences. And this is a question we actually get often. How do I
Recently, I feel like we've gotten this question so many times.
So first, the idea of natural consequences. So we're talking about, our job as parents is to discipline our kids, is meaning we use discipline as an opportunity to form our kids so that it's nobody else's job. It's our job to discipline and form our children. So first, you got to take that on and say, this is your job. This isn't someone else's. 2, you need to recognize that discipline is an act of love. And this, okay, sorry about that. And, but then what we have always kind of extolled the idea or encouraged the idea of being able to tie the consequences to the act, meaning let the punishment fit the crime type of idea, that it flows out of, as an example, one of our natural consequences that we try to incorporate is that when a kid comes home late, from their curfew, right? A teenager, they miss their curfew, even if it's by 10, 15 minutes, well, they lose an hour off of their curfew for the next weekend.
Right.
It's a natural consequence. Or
if they, a toddler takes and throws all of their food on the floor, makes a big mess, well, then they have to help in cleaning that up.
Right.
Yeah.
But something that we were that was just shared with us, or kind of a reminder to us, sometimes we get overly fixated on having a natural consequence, that it has to be perfectly lined up, right? And we want to encourage you to recognize that it's not always necessary to have a natural consequence, meaning sometimes a consequence is all that's needed. And sometimes we as a parents, if we have a simple, easy go-to option, and this could be you're writing, you're sitting in the corner, you're doing blah, 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 whatever it might be.
You're going to your room.
We're taking your phone away. You lose TV, you lose privileges, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Those might be sufficient if they work for you.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, natural consequences will always come in our earthly life. That will happen. But in the early days, it's our job to do as best we can. To do
artificial consequences for our children. So they learn those, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I think that the most important thing about consequence is that you actually give a consequence.
Right.
And if it takes you too long, or if you are too frustrated and you just kind of let it go and you don't do anything, that's a problem. You have to do what is consistent, what is easy for you. Because it's hard to be a parent. It's hard to discipline kids. And I think that it's really important that we make the time to actually give them a consequence and not worry about it being the perfect way or whatever. No, stand in the corner is fine. Your kid talks back to you. You say, great. Now you have to go and sweep the floor. Now you have to wash the floor. They keep talking back to you. Then I would be like, okay, great. Now you're doing the dishes as well. You want to keep talking? I've said that to my teenagers. You want to keep talking? I have lots more that I can have you do. Or fine, now you have to go to bed. When we get to, if you're fighting in the car, when we get to where we're going, you have to stay in the car. You're not allowed to get out of the car. And if they
Not permanently.
Like you have to wait in the car 10 minutes where we get to where we want to go. And then if they keep talking, we'll make it 15 minutes, make it 20 minutes, make it half an hour. But you have to do what's easy for you. That's what's important.
So does that make sense? If you have questions or want more on this, we're happy to respond to that.
Okay. All right, toddler, 2.5-year-old brother is aggressive with baby brother, almost a year old. How to discipline when it is constant. Some days we do lots of one-on-one time already. So, there's two words there that are just like jumping out to me. One is aggressive and one is discipline. Just so you know, a 2.5-year-old, it's not, I just want you to know, there's nothing wrong with your 2.5-year-old. I feel like 2.5-year-old or toddlers walk around and they're like, I don't know how to play with you. I push you over. Is this how you play? I don't know. I jump on top of you. Is that how I'm supposed to play with you? They don't know. They are figuring it out. So let's not start labeling our kids, right, as aggressive or a problem or whatever. And let's instead just kind of see, hey, they need to learn. It's okay, And as you tell your child, if you take them off, no, you may not do that. And don't go, you may not do that, honey. No, it is okay to be stern with your children and to make them a little bit afraid of you. So if you say to your toddler, you may not do that. No, not angry, but firm, not smiling. Take them off. Give them something else to do. You're doing a lot of one-on-one time already. Great. Keep doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a great foundation for you.
Because your 2.5-year-old, if you keep correcting him, he'll get it. It's okay. He's not going to be 7, beating up his little brother, except maybe a little bit, maybe sometimes.
But that's brothers. But also, too, just to add to that, one, they're not going to be here forever in this time of their life. And
pretty soon the 1.5-year-old will just start biting them. So then it'll be fine. Then it'll stop.
But as parents, oftentimes it's our job to engineer the environment and really set them up for that kind of success. And so just really look at the situation where can you trust your toddler? Probably nowhere. That's just
I wouldn't leave those two kids alone together. I don't think that's safe. Yeah.
It's just, and setting, I know it gets taxing, and we do call this the survival zone or the survival years for a reason. It is challenging, but they do grow out of it. Keep loving them. Keep correcting and protecting.
You know what I would do? Actually, I had a porta-crib that was in our kitchen. Right. And I would put the 1-year-old in the porta-crib.
To protect them.
To protect them from the other kids.
It wasn't a jail.
No, it's like they're just figuring it out.
Yeah.
So
keep working. You're doing good.
Yeah. Hey, the kids are alive. You're doing great.
All right. So toddlers in mass. Go. So toddlers at mass, again, we're just in the toddler zone, I guess, of these questions today. And I see another one too that's really in that same phase. A lot of toddler parents today. But toddlers at mass, one, their whole life is oriented towards action and movement. And mass is the opposite of that, right?
Yeah.
So first thing is pre-mass. The more that you can spend a little bit, small doses of quiet sitting time with them at home, little prayer, very little. Don't try to go too long, but you're building up a habit for them. So the more that you can do to slowly begin, will there always be challenges? There might be with particular kids, but the more that we can begin on the front end with having some quiet, peaceful prayer before and outside of Mass will be better.
Number 1, never give your toddler a screen. Never, ever, 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 please never, ever, 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 ever give your toddler, never say,
ever.
Oh, here, look, watch this. Because you know what that's doing? That is not helping them to learn how to be quiet at Mass, okay? And don't do it at Mass because it's distracting to everybody. Read with your toddler. Read with your toddler at home. Sit quietly, like Mike was just saying. Have that practice time where you're sitting quietly and you're reading, maybe you're doing little Jesus books or whatever. So then when you're at Mass, I would have my grandchildren, I take my grandchildren to Mass right now with us, so I'm with you. And then have your child sit on your lap and they can look at a book all during Mass.
Or color.
I would bring, until they're even 6, a piece of paper, even a blank little notebook with one pencil. Again, that will take them forever. They will just do that. I always point out to them, look at this. I just kind of talk really quietly to them. Oh, look at them preparing the altar. He's using the cup, he's washing his hands. Look at look at this, that, whatever. Kind of drawing attention to that. If they are starting to be loud, okay, and I mean loud, talking above a normal tone of voice for any extended period of time, and then if you take them into the back, don't put them down. Because they will learn, I'll go in the back and I'll run around. That's what Dad's for. because sometimes some toddlers are very hard to hold on to them. So Dad would take him.
We've always tried to kind of divide and conquer. If we had, again, like the previous situation where there was a toddler and a little guy, like a baby, an infant or something, that mom would have the infant, again, it depends on the relationship and their attachment and all of that. But I felt like there were some times where I was simply in the back and I'm like, was I really at Mass today? I don't know. All I had was a kid in my arms, struggling, crying. But I knew that if I let them down and they ran around in either our children's chapel or in the hall, then it's creating this habit, this desire that they're.
And I've noticed our son, Pat, is very, very strict with his kids. He does not let them go. And he has a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a baby. And those kids are amazingly good at Mass. And they sit, just right in with everybody
And some
else.
kids are easier and some kids are just more difficult. But you as a parent have to get creative with that. But don't give up. It's worth it. It's worth it.
I guess that's why I say that is because he will really struggle with them for a long time. But they've learned they're not going to get down and run around in the back.
When you become that hard wall that they can rest on, there's a security in that. So I encourage you in that.
And they like having time to be held by mommy or daddy and just look at books all during
And
Mass.
we're going to do an entire podcast coming up on kids in Mass.
Yes, that is an upcoming podcast. It's on the list, guys. It's on the list, I promise.
All right, so a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old kids living with in-laws. TV is always on with no filters and not age appropriate. What do I do? Grandpa is always watching and the kids want to be with Grandpa. I've talked to Grandpa and he gets mad and wants to keep watching his shows. Help! Okay, so what do you want to start?
Go ahead.
All right, so first you're living with your in-laws, right? So that is a choice. Maybe you have to. It's necessary. All of that with regards to the reality of where you need to be. But when you've made that decision, you are under someone else's roof. Mm-hmm. And that makes it more challenging. You do have less freedom and less autonomy when you're not in your own home. So there's a certain level of respect that you need to give to your in-laws. So the first thing after that is...
Well, I would say the first thing you have to do is that you need to get on the same page with your spouse. Right. Because if these are not your parents, I wouldn't tell my father-in-law what to do ever. I wouldn't even think about that. I wouldn't even consider that.
Because you'd make me do it.
Yes, I would. No, but it's because if these are your in-laws, there has to be there's certain boundaries there. And so the first thing I would say, you and your spouse need to get on the same page.
100%.
And if you are worried about, as far as like TV, if you have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, anything's on the TV, honestly, is going to go right over their head. It's not going to really affect them. But if it's getting to the point that it's a moral issue, move out. Like, figure out something else to do and move out because you are making that choice. I mean, I hate to tell you, but it's like you're making that choice to live with your in-laws. And if that's the case, then you're living under their roof and that is their home. And so there is a certain amount of respect there. But I think if you and your spouse are on the same page, and if he can talk, or he or she, I don't know who wrote that, I'm assuming it's a woman, but if your spouse can talk to his parents, there can be some kind of understanding, great. But if not,
yeah, and I think that's what
it's a difficult
that would
situation.
Be the thing I would just add too is that own your part. Own with deep extreme ownership what you can do in the situation. Because if you choose to let it go and it really bothers you, then you're kind of going against your conscience.
Yeah.
Again, and that's an issue. But if you are at this situation where it's like we don't see alternatives, get really serious about getting creative.
Right.
You know, take the time to really discern and pray through this. And then I don't think it's a bad thing for at least one, the one that's the parent, is who's related to the grandpa, to have a conversation and say, hey, want to give you complete freedom. This is your house, your rules.
Yes.
But what I want you to know is we do not want our kids to grow up in that, exposed to this. We're going to do our best to keep them out of here. Can you help support us in that?
Yeah.
And we will be looking for another place that we can afford. Or again, I'm not telling you to move, but I'm telling you, it's pretty serious, it sounds like, from your level. Is it really that serious? Is it raising to that level? Mm-hmm. And then I would be honest with them and say, hey, Dad, I get it. I want to respect you, but this is the consequence. If you keep on this path, that means we're going to be
what we're
going
gonna
down
have
this
to do.
path, and we're going to have to look for this. And I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm just trying to let you know these are the consequences.
It's called extreme ownership. You are not a victim.
That's right.
Have good boundaries. That's it. Okay, communication with husband when in the trenches with toddler and new job.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have in our podcast, we talk about family culture and having 5 priorities in your family life. And the more we research and learn and just kind of come
And
in
talk
contact,
to a lot of couples, right?
talk to lots of people, it is confirmed and confirmed and confirmed that this is the way it goes. Number 1, in your home, spiritual life of your home. That's caring for yourself, caring for your own relationship with God, prayer. That has to be the first thing. Second thing has to be your marriage. Has to be your marriage. Everything else rests on your marriage. After that is the kids. After that is your job. And I know that can be tough. So communication with husband when in the trenches with toddler and new job. Okay, spiritual life, marriage, children, toddlers, new job. So you got to make it happen. You have to make that happen. You have to do whatever you have to do in your life. And we have talked to people who are married who have 5 kids. Their husband is in medical residency. Their life is crazy. But you know how they get through that time? Is by making that time for each other. Even if it's 10 minutes a day, even if it's 15 minutes a day. I know that it's hard, but it's worth it to get that habit of making sure that you are taking time for each other, that you're talking to each other, and so when you say communication with husband, and you need to tell your husband, this is better for him. If you two are in a better place, then guess what? The toddlers are going to be easier. His job is going to be easier. I know it's a lot, but we always have to make sure that we're living a balanced life.
Yeah, and one of the, just to kind of point out, we just had a wonderful podcast with 3 different couples. And one of those couples was going through very similar things you talked about, meaning they had, kids kind of in the survival zone. They felt overwhelmed with their kids. Dad had a new job that was very demanding and pulling him away. And what they really saw was that they needed to prioritize their marriage. They did have their spiritual life in order, but what they realized is that they were parenting and trying to put out fires, but they really actually were placing their careers above their family and their marriage. And when they got their marriage back on track, when they realized we aren't acting in loving relationship, they still loved each other. There wasn't a question there, but it was also like, okay, we're letting the kids and our careers pull us apart. You
know what he said? The husband said, our marriage was good, but I knew that it wouldn't be good if we kept on the trajectory that we were on.
So look really at where you are today, and then really plant that flag. And actually, just to kind of put all of these in that perspective, it's like, as parents, we need to have a vision for what we want for our marriage, for our children, and put that flag out there and say, what am I doing today in order to get us closer to that? To move us to what God has, the best version of our family, the best version of our marriage, and do not settle. And let us live one step today. That's all we have to worry about, is what's the one step today that we're going to take.
So thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Friday at 5:30. So we had to change it a little bit because of Mass and everything today. But thank you for all of you who jumped on with us. It was great to see everybody.
God bless you, and have a
great
wonderful Lent.